I'll be honest, when I first saw this New York Times headline, I rolled my eyes. 2 magicians warn the Supreme Court about junk science. Now, the eye rolling wasn't just because warning the current United States Supreme Court justices about junk science is about as worthwhile as warning my dog about the environmental costs of bacon. Not only do they not care, but they are actively in favor of the bacon. The junk science. I'm sorry, I've lost track of the metaphor. No, I rolled my eyes because Penn and Teller have in the past been the ones spreading junk science. I was a huge fan of Penn and Teller as a kid. They're a big reason why I became a juggler and a magician, why I became a fan of James Randi, and why I do what I do today on this very channel. But back then, they were never really good at critical thinking. They knew that psychics were phony because they knew the magic tricks the psychics were lying about not using. But their skepticism, so to speak, was really just based on their capital L libertarianism. That's why their Showtime TV show, Bullshit, featured them debunking topics like the government trying to ban smoking inside bars and restaurants in order to protect workers and other patrons from the dangers of secondhand smoke. That wasn't something they did in season 8 when they were running low on topics. That was episode 5 of season 1. That season ended with them debunking climate change, and then they went on to target veganism, school violence, recycling, yoga, exercise, college, hair, gun control, the Endangered Species Act, reparations for slavery, hybrid cars, NASA, the United Nations, taxation in general, and criticism of Walmart. Like, they were against the criticism. They were pro Walmart. So yeah, I was, let's say, skeptical that they might have anything of import to tell anyone about the dangers of junk science. But happily, I was wrong. They are, all these years later, getting back to talking about what they know, and they are doing it for a genuinely great cause. In January of 1998, 64-year-old Betty Black was found murdered in her home in what was obviously a robbery gone wrong. Her neighbors saw 2 men get out of a car and enter her home just prior to her being discovered murdered. And one neighbor immediately identified one of the men as Richard Childs, but none of the neighbors knew the identity of the second man. One witness, Jill Barganier, went to the police station and viewed several photo lineups. She identified Childs with no problem, but she did not see the second man among the choices offered to her. She described him as being similar to Childs, white, medium build, with long hair. One of the photos police showed to her in the lineup was a friend of Childs named Charles Flores, a large Hispanic man with short hair who told police that at the time of the murder, he was making breakfast with his wife in a neighboring town. Despite the fact that he had an alibi and bore no resemblance to what the witnesses said, the police were sure Flores was the second man, and they went ahead and arrested him. So they brought Barganier back in, and an officer hypnotized her in order to improve her recollection, telling her that hypnosis allows her to tap into the tape recorder in her brain. She again stated that both men were white, medium build with long hair, but the officer repeatedly asked her if the second man actually had short hair, neatly cut hair, trimmed hair, and then told her that oftentimes memory can actually improve as time goes on after the hypnosis. At the trial, 13 months later, Barganier's story changed. She knew for a fact that the second man was actually Charles Flores. She even knew his name, which the judge pointed out, saying, honestly, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to pick out who is the Hispanic individual in the courtroom. He allowed her testimony regardless. With no physical evidence against him, Flores was convicted and sentenced to die. Richard Childs, on the other hand, admitted to being the person who murdered Betty Black. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison, but only served 16. He was released in 2016. So the man who admitted to murdering Black has been free for 10 years, while the man who was convicted of being there at the same time, based on an eyewitness who changed her story after being hypnotized, is in prison waiting to be executed by the state. I think that the wildest part of this isn't even the fact that the cops hypnotized someone into identifying the guy that they had already arrested. As of 2023, Texas no longer allows testimony influenced by hypnosis. Great. But that law isn't retroactive. But the wildest thing is that even back in 1998, Texas did not allow officers to participate in the hypnosis. So this wasn't even legal back then. There's absolutely no reason this guy should be on death row. Hypnosis is, of course, not a way to tap into a tape recorder in your brain. It's a party trick that charismatic people can use to successfully influence the behavior and, yes, even the memory of suggestive people. I've mentioned this in the past, but hypnotists travel in similar circles as magicians, and so I've met a few. They were all weird freaks. I honestly think that a lot of people, mostly men, get into hypnotism because they have a genuine desire to manipulate people, mostly women, into doing whatever they want. It's gross. So yeah, Penn and Teller are the perfect people to point this out. An attorney helping Flores try to get a new trial reached out to Penn and Teller asking if they would write a brief to the Supreme Court explaining that hypnotism is, well, bullshit. And they did. And I think that that should be applauded. Sure, the court is currently infested with compromised conservative assholes, but we do now live in a political age of taking television entertainers seriously in our political processes. Not only do they stand a better chance than some no-name psychologist who studies misinformation or something, but they also got the New York Times to publish an article and a video on this case, which will increase public pressure for the court to take up the case. If they do, they have a chance to set a precedent that could help even more people falsely imprisoned based on pseudoscience. On a personal note, seeing Penn and Teller stand up for science and justice in this case really gives me hope that two people I admired so much as a kid and who influenced me so much might be able to bounce back to at least being not terrible. Back in 2022, Penn publicly announced that he's moved away from libertarianism thanks in part to being invited to lead anti-mask rallies and then seeing the anti-vaccine crowd erupt against the COVID vaccine. And honestly, kudos to him. Even in this short clip from the Washington Post, he is still wrong. He doesn't think people should be forced to wear seatbelts, but they should be forced to not drive drunk, which suggests that a person who doesn't wear a seatbelt has no chance of ejecting themselves into anyone else and killing or injuring them. He still doesn't fully understand that some individual stupid decisions can have drastic negative consequences for other people. But he's at least admitting that he was wrong a little bit. And that's something. Does that make up for the long list of rational ideas that he debunked in bullshit? No. Not at all. They had a huge audience and they told them secondhand smoke was perfectly fine for them, which likely really impacted public support for legislation that has absolutely saved lives in the years since. And quietly mumbling about how, well, he might have been fooled by some bad science years later, which is what he did at a conference I attended once, it's not enough. But if he can help save this one life, the life of Charles Flores, then yeah, maybe I can go back to simply admiring him for his actual talent instead of cursing his spreading of dangerous misinformation.
Hey,
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.